Thomas, Ron, the father of Kelly Thomas, they held their press conference today. They showed the medical records from UC Irvine and St. Jude's Hospital. They showed radiological photos of the damage done to Kelly's face. They explained how he died. The cause of death was signed on July the 10th at UC Irvine, which makes you really suspect that something fishy, something stinky is going on in Tony Rackauckas' office if he keeps issuing statements every day claiming we're waiting for the cause of death to be certified by the coroner. Cause of death should have been certified 2 months ago. So this is a lot of nonsense going on. So let's hear from Garo Mardirossian, the attorney. Garo, thank you for coming on with us.
Sure, thank you for having me.
What do you think the holdup is with Tony Rackauckas? You have the medical records. It's clear what happened. There's really no further discussion required. What do you think is going on here?
Well, I'd like to think that he's just doing a thorough investigation. They've claimed that they've investigated over 100 witnesses thoroughly, and that now they're just waiting to hear from the coroner what the cause of death is. Well, today we answered that question for him. We answered that question in black and white, as clear as daylight, that the cause of death is brain injury due to head trauma. So hopefully now they'll stop the delay, they'll stop any further investigation, and do the right thing and indict these officers.
Wouldn't they have access to these medical reports long ago?
You would think they would. I would like to think they've had access to it since July the 11th, but for whatever reason, they haven't been, forthright about the content of these records.
The form, because we have a copy of the records, we have the UC Irvine brain death declaration form, and it's signed by a physician, dated July the 10th. July the 10th.
Well, if you see both the two records together, it's the brain death declaration form and the report of death caused by form, which is the next page.
Yeah, I have that.
Those two together, what happens is they had him in the hospital at St. Jude's long enough to resuscitate him so that his heart began to pump again. Then they immediately transferred him to UCI, where they have better teams to see if they could do anything with Kelly, but they couldn't. The brain was completely anoxic, which means it had been deprived of oxygen. And so after a few days of trying to work on him, they decided, the brain is completely dead. And they reached that conclusion on July the 10th, finally. And within hours, they stopped care, and Kelly expired. So I would, by the 5th, really, when they transferred him from St. Jude's, they already knew that he was brain dead. They just hadn't given up hope. So they tried for another 5 days, and after 5, they had to decide to stop all care.
I feel like we're in a circle, Garo, with this story, because the Orange County DA, last time we heard from them, they said they're about halfway done, but they're also waiting for the coroner's office and the toxicology reports to come back. And why would any of these reports take 2 months?
They shouldn't. If these were criminals without badges, they would have put them in jail and completely done a full investigation real fast.
While they're in jail, yeah.
Criminals happen to wear badges because we paid them a tremendous amount of money to protect and serve us. We give them that extra deference, and I don't blame them for that. But, that extra deference means a week, maybe 2 weeks, but not 2 months. I think it's way overdue. The DA is having a very difficult time just because of politics, because you got to remember that day in and day out, the same district attorney's office has to use these same officers to prosecute their cases against bad guys, against real criminals.
Yeah,
and it's hard for them to turn around and take some of these officers and say, you know what? We now identify you as a bad guy.
But what is this, a religious cult?
Exactly,
I mean, yeah, sometimes
it's supposed to do. And it's very rare that a peace officer crosses that line and becomes a criminal, and that's what happened here.
Okay, but we're adults in the real world. Sometimes cops go berserk and commit crimes, and then they act like it's some kind of religious cult, like it's never occurred to them in their lives that a cop could do something horrific. Well, they did. It happened. I don't know what else to say here.
Well, what else to say, I guess, is we got to keep the pressure and not let them forget, because if we get off the front pages, they will just sweep this under the rug, and that'll be the end of the Kelly case, and we'll just move on.
You really believe that if we don't keep talking about this, that Rackauckus will never file charges and the case will be in limbo indefinitely?
Well, absolutely. He'll just say, we can't decide, we can't decide. If we can't decide, we can't bring charges, and that's why I'm hoping the AG's office, or better yet, the federal prosecutor will step in, who does not have the same kind of conflict as the DA's office has. But I'm still hopeful.
They're that afraid of prosecuting
in the next week and bring charges.
Well, how come the federal prosecutors have not completed their case either?
Well, because they're saying we want to wait to see what the locals do. We don't want to step on the locals' toes. If the locals bring charges and they prosecute, we'll step aside and let them do their thing. But if the locals don't, then the AG, or better yet, the federal prosecutor ought to, and I think will, step in.
All right, we will have more of our interview with Garo Mardirossian coming up right after Terry Ray's news in the next segment.
And if you're just tuning in, again, they're laying out in a news conference this morning based on the medical records of Kelly Thomas from UC Irvine Hospital, what they believe caused his death. Which, to be specific, because I didn't know exactly, it was taser blows to the face. They believe at least one officer was wailing away at Kelly Thomas's face with the butt end of the taser. And then, of course, they also tasered him a couple of times in the front and the back.
And so much blood.
Somebody beat his ribs.
So much blood was pouring out of his face and internally that it filled his lungs with the blood, and he choked and drowned on his old blood, which cut off oxygen to the brain.
All right, you'll hear more of our interview with Garo Mardirossian when we come back.
On the John and Ken Show, Terry Ray's got the news.
Texas Governor